the hub of governance professionals.
Hey, Obinna, good to see you. You look so worried. Is everything all right? I'm having...
The world is constantly evolving into a knowledge-based economy where skills and competencies constitute the lifeblood of public and corporate governance. You therefore need to empower yourself to fit into this new world by gaining basic knowledge and improving your skill set in the governance-focused disciplines. That is why every aspiring as well as practicing professional in governance field needs ICSAN.
ICSAN. What is ICSAN?
ICSAN is a leading statutorily established professional body dedicated to enhancing the status and practice of corporate governance and public administration. ICSAN members are trained as chartered secretaries and administrators.
Who are chartered secretaries and administrators?
Chartered secretaries are high-ranking governance professionals with a broad base of skills, unique amongst other professions. They are trained in law, finance, accounting, administration, strategy development, and corporate governance. In today's world, chartered secretaries and administrators discharge a wide range of duties and responsibilities, including functioning as chairmen of companies, executive directors, non-executive directors, company secretaries, risk managers, compliance managers, board evaluators, and corporate governance evaluators.
That is interesting. How then do I become a chartered secretary and administrator?
Good. Go to the Institute's website, www.icsan.org. You can also visit the National Secretariat of ICSAN at Plot 6, Elephant Cement Way, Alausa Ikeja, Lagos, to get full information on how to become members. ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Good morning. Welcome to Corporate Governance Platform on ECO 89.7 FM. Corporate Governance Platform is a program sponsored by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, the leading professional body dedicated to corporate governance and administration. My name is Olabisi Omidiri. Welcome. Today on the show, we're doing a continuation of what we started off last week. And our focus is going to be on committee system and delegation of responsibilities by the board. Committee system and delegation of responsibilities by the board. And our guest on today's edition of Corporate Governance Platform is Mr. DIRAN FALORE, FCIS, past chairman, Abuja chapter of ICSAN. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me again.
And I also have with me in the studio, Kayode Ketefe, FCIS, Head of Research. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you, Olabisi, our guest, Mr. DIRAN FALORE. Good morning, and all our listeners. Good morning to you all.
Right, let's get into the business of the day, which is the continuation of what we started last week, and that is the committee system and delegation of responsibilities by the board. Mr. FALORE, sir, in what ways do board committees contribute to the corporate governance?
Principally, board committee members can do that by attending committee meetings, right? Because they are appointed to be members of certain committees, and one of the principal ways in which they can contribute to the company or to the management of the company is by ensuring that when meetings are being constituted for those committees, they are attending that. Then secondly, there has to be a significant level of their participatory interest in the committee assignment or terms of reference. So it's not just about attending the meetings alone, but we need to see their skill sets being lent to the company, their expertise. So that participatory interest is very key.
Amazing. So the code also provides that the MD, CEO, should not be a member of the committees responsible for the enumeration, audit, or nomination and governance. Why is this so?
Yeah, it's pretty simple because one of the cardinal principles of corporate governance is to ensure that there are no undue influence on the part of any board member. And since the chairman is the head of the board and also the company, it is expected that the committee members must be able to fulfill their terms of reference without any undue influence or conflict of interest from the chairman. So it's always recommendable, as the regulation also, the code also prescribes, that the chairman shouldn't be a member of any of the committee, so that the committee members can do their work without any undue influence from the chairman.
So will it be necessary for a company to establish other committees in addition to the traditional ones you have mentioned earlier?
Could you say that again?
Will it be necessary for a company to establish other committees in addition to the traditional ones you have mentioned here?
Yes, I would. I think the proper answer is yes and no, in the sense that we have to look at the capacity of the company itself. If you are dealing with a public company, for example, that has large turnovers and net assets, where these three committees may not be sufficient, you may need to expand that scope. But if it's as to a smaller company with minimal turnover and asset, then you can do away with just these three board committees.
Let's look at it this way. Will it be feasible for a company with majority of directors who are not independent to have effective committee system?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I said, will it be feasible for a company with majority of directors who are not independent to have effective committee system?
Not at all. Not at all. And that's one of the things that the code prescribe, which is that you must have larger numbers of non-executive directors on your board.
So, still on the issue of committee system and delegation of responsibilities by the board, the program is still Corporate Governance Platform on Echo 89.7 FM. My guest is Mr. DIRAN FALORE, FCIS, past chairman, Abuja chapter of ICSAN. Moving ahead, is it necessary for a small company to establish all these board committees?
For us to do a proper justice to that question, I think we need to first describe or qualify what we mean by small companies, right? And if you go by the definition of small companies in CAMA, it posits that small companies are private companies, for example, that their turnover has to be less than 120 million, their net asset has to be less than 60 million, right? And none of its shareholders must be foreign or government agencies. And importantly, the directors must have nothing less than 51% of his stake of his equity share capital. So that is to describe a small company itself. So to now answer the question, which is whether it is necessary and advisable, my answer would be a yes, in the sense that if your company is right, has a net assets or turnover less than 10 million, for example, you may not necessarily have to have this board constituted in your company. But the moment you start having big figures, net assets, your turnover is higher than 10 million naira and possibly less than 120 and 60 million as it applies, then it's my advice that such corporate entities should have these boards, should have these board committees.
Okay. So is it desirable that these committees be replicated in the public sector as well?
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. We need to bear in mind that one of the cardinal goals of corporate governance policies, right, is to create a more effective and efficient system across all sectors, whether public or private. And as the name of our institute indicates, we call ourselves chartered secretaries, right, and public administrators. So we have our members spread across all sectors, both private and public. So it is necessary, even with the situation in Nigeria at the moment, it's advisable that the public sector must embrace corporate governance in its operations.
Okay.
And in doing that, you are already establishing these committees.
So what advice, in wrapping up with you, what advice do you have for companies and other organizations on how to get their committee system right?
Fantastic question. I think the first thing any corporate entity has to do, or public sector organization has to do, is to actually carry out a diagnosis, which is to have a board audit and a compliance audit as to the operation and workability of the company itself, or that corporate entity, that public organization. You know, like they say, the moment you know that you have an headache, you diagnose yourself that you have an headache, then you know the right medicine to take. So if the entity itself is able to do a diagnosis, an audit, or a board audit, or a compliance audit of its operation, then they can take the next step, which is to expose the board member to a series of trainings. You know, they can consult our esteemed institute, for example. They can also reach out to any of the registered members of ICSAN, you know, to get it right.
Okay, I must appreciate your thought pattern on the issue this morning, where you talk extensively on committee system and delegation of responsibilities by the board, in continuation of what we started last week. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Right. That was Mr. DIRAN FALORE, FCIS, past chairman, Abuja chapter of ICSAN. We'll take this short break, and then when we come back, Mr. Ketefe has some information. Corporate Governance Platform, Echo 89.7 FM. Mr. Ketefe, coming to you. What advice does the Institute have for the companies on the need to get the composition of their committees right?
Thank you very much, Olabisi. Let me start by saying that the committee structure contributes a lot to good corporate governance. This committee system was deliberately developed in corporate governance to make the work of the board of directors easier and more efficient. When you look at each of the committees, they have specific responsibilities which are very important. So the performance of these responsibilities help to enhance board effectiveness and efficiency.
Okay, so will ICSAN rate...
Let me quickly summarize the point here, because the committee focusing on specific areas that are delegated to them by the board, they enable the board itself to concentrate on more specific, more strategic agenda. So it's for this reason that ICSAN is hereby advising companies and other organizations to ensure that they get the right structure, they get the right mix in their committee system. So this will allow them to reap inherent benefits. Let me end this question by saying that our institute can assist in this regard by giving guidance to companies and other organizations on the issue of board composition and on the issue of effective use of committee system. Our training departments also constantly feature teams on board composition and committee system, which those seeking knowledge in this area can attend to boost their capacity. Thank you.
All right, and lastly, will ICSAN rate the provisions on committee system in the Nigeria Code of Corporate Governance 2020 as conforming with best practices?
ICSAN code.
ICSAN rates the provisions on committee system in the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2020 as conforming with best practices.
Thank you very much. The national code is 2018. The National Code of Corporate Governance is 2018. So let me just start by saying that the principle 11 of that code empowers the board to delegate our duties and responsibilities to well-structured committees. And the board must do this without abdicating its responsibilities. That is, without abdicating the oversight role, because it merely delegates this responsibility to the committees. The principle 11 that I'm talking of contain 16 recommended practices, which constitute summarized best practices on the committee system. These provisions, they are well conceived, they are practicable, and essentially they represent acceptable standard on the subject. ICSAN was deeply involved in the drafting of the code, and it made our own contribution to ensure that the code generally attain